There has been a constant question echoing in my mind this last week, especially with patch 6.1. And no worries, no spoilers here in this video. I haven't done the story. I couldn't ruin it for you even if I wanted to. And the reason why I haven't done the story is because right now I'm hopelessly addicted to Crystal Conflict and Frontlines again. And that's kind of what this video is going to end up focusing in on. Where does Final Fantasy XIV go from here? And ultimately, what do I want to see in Frontlines, in Crystalline Conflict, in PvP, heck, and to get some spicy takes here later in the video, what do I want to see bleed over into the PvE side of this game? So hi everyone, my name is Brian if you're new around here, but if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back, you magnificent, just dadgum freaking legend. That's what you get for subscribing, by the way. Free compliments at the start of these videos. So when I talk about a lot of PvP, as my voice cracks, and why not, well, let's just roll with it. I've been mainly focusing right now on casters. If you guys aren't aware, I have Ginger JRPG, in which I've been posting my controller guides and been doing PvP focused controller guides alongside my PvE ones over on that channel. I'll try to include a link in the top comment or something like that for you guys if you're interested in following that channel. But when I've been playing, there is a real clear difference between Frontlines and Crystal Conflict. I kind of describe it as Frontlines is chaos and, you know, Crystal Conflict is order, like a defined set of rules. But having played both, and I love that like the overhaul of the jobs and how they feel in both pieces of content, I think it's clear that I really want an overhaul to Frontlines now. And what I mean by this is that Frontlines is multiple modes, each with their own map. Crystalline Conflict is one mode with multiple maps. And I think essentially when it comes down to Frontlines, they added in the Frontline roulette so that every day you're kind of getting your different mode. But there's days that I just don't like the rule set. And there's days that I actually adore the rule set to Frontlines. And that's where I think it would be wonderful to see if they decided to go ahead and say, Frontlines is the mode, and it's going to have its set of rules that you can play with that are standard, and then each of the maps that exist are in fact maps, much like Crystalline Conflict. Furthermore, like when we bring a little bit of the old feast back in, there were some UI elements, especially whenever somebody got knocked out, that I think would be and benefit in Frontlines and in Crystalline Conflict, just that kind of fanfare whenever somebody gets knocked out. Crystalline Conflict has it kind of as this log, but I did like when it really popped up, and maybe it just doesn't work for that, and maybe it wouldn't work for Frontlines, but if nothing else, bringing in that log for when somebody knocks somebody out, I think would essentially kind of be a real treat. In fact, actually the UI elements themselves, I think in Frontlines could definitely benefit from the Crystalline Conflict, but also freaking plates, bring that into the Frontline system, bring that into Rival Wings. If Feast does come back, make it 5v5, bring in the adventure plates, and this is where things start to trickle into PvE. Crystalline Conflict makes me wish that we had 5-man dungeons. I don't know how you guys feel about that. You can let me know if it's crazy. I think it would be an insane amount of work. Note that I don't think that's going to happen because of the amount of work that it would take for them to go and overhaul all of their 4-man dungeons, and all of a sudden now they're 5-man dungeons. That would be, like, honestly ridiculous. But it makes me yearn for that. And I know we're getting the Criterion dungeons, which actually is scalable 1 through 4. And it just makes me go like, oh, before you launch it, because it's scalable, maybe do 5-man, like maybe just like have us, here's a weird transitional period in the history of Final Fantasy XIV. 5-man dungeons. It's its own piece of content now. I love that. Like doing Crystalline Conflict, 5 just feels like the right amount, like a balance. It also feels that I think it allows the jobs to kind of be a little bit more, have a little bit more identity. I don't know why, because as you scale into 4, like if you think about certain abilities or certain roles or certain things, the smaller number of the party, the more, like, I guess, jack of all trades you have to be to kind of account for certain things. But going to 5, it does allow it does feel like it's able to insert more identity. Now, more information on that, you know, maybe in a future video, because I did put out a poll, because it does feel like the PvP job identity is way stronger in terms of that over its PvE counterparts, but I haven't finished leveling up everything, so I kind of want to wait till I'm at 90. And by the way, I hit Black Mage to 90 today, and we're going to be updating the controller guide for that for Endwalker here in the near future for PvE. The PvP is already posted, by the way. So Ooh, man, like when I look at it, like one of the things I feel is dramatically lacking in terms of the PvP content itself is a lack of kind of stats that are character based. Like that's the history of your games. I tweeted out like me being on top of the board in terms of damage and kills as my black mage, which is so good in PvP. But that's where that exists. If I don't take a screenshot of that scoreboard, there's no way to kind of go back and look at kind of my history of games and my stats and my like KDA and all these various like values that I would really, really like to see brought into Final Fantasy XIV. I'd love to see that aspect brought into the PvE side as well. I think essentially more stats is usually going to be the default answer as a former baseball player and somebody who really enjoys the sport baseball. I love stats. It's kind of my thing. But beyond that, like I think if they added the stats, if they added in essentially the cohesive nature to all of what's PvP, then the final ask ends up being that we should be able to see duels like outside of the dueling circle. I don't know how that ultimately translates, because I know that people don't want to necessarily, like they like the fact that they're not always in, you know, threat. And so whenever I talk about taking PvP outside of the Wolves Den, I think people feel like that means open world free-for-all PvP, which I don't think works in Final Fantasy XIV at all. It would be such a shift that I don't think it would actually be like a well-received one. But the ability to like kind of set up your own, you know, PvP matches in the open world, I think it would be very cool to see. I think essentially that would be something where it would be really exciting to see how it plays out in terms of it. But that obviously gets into problems with how they've designed PvP in 14, being that your skill set and more is also like different. So it literally would have to have them go in and create like a barrier in a certain area that you could actually PvP in that area, and maybe ultimately wouldn't work out for the long run. Here I am talking myself out of my idea, but I still feel like being able to PvP outside of the Wolves Den would be a real perk. Maybe they would have more dueling, you know, circles that would exist elsewhere, and allow you to do, you know, like more things with taking the rule sets of the different games and bringing them in. You know, I think that'd be exciting. I do like, I still wouldn't mind like a Guild Wars, you know, style system in which that like we see that the world versus world or server versus server where people are competing over the course of a given long period of time. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. And I don't want to make this video longer than it needs to be. At the end of the day, I think 6.1 has really knocked it out of the park. I think that there's a lot of improvements that they can take from what they've already done and extrapolate that out into the other PvP modes. And honestly, again, like I said, like when it comes down to Frontline and maps, the fact that you have maps, each Frontline mode is its own map, I think that would benefit essentially what they've already done with Crystalline Conflict and kind of simplifying it so that Frontlines is its own rule set. And then that exists across the different maps themselves. And maybe you could still have different map hazards just like you do in Crystalline Conflict, but the rules would be the same, whether it was shatter, whether it was, you know, whatever. And then you update the UI to kind of match it, to match its quality, and then bring in nameplates. I think nameplates need to exist in every piece of content in this game. They're just truly probably the biggest standout of the patch. And yeah, that's my thoughts. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you feel like it earns it, like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more of these discussion and deep dive style videos. You can always check out my sub channels if you're looking for more focused content, news, and guides. So thank you guys. Hopefully you have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully I'll see you next week. But until then, take care.